Hi gang, let's try another example of what we just did, finding values of trig functions. So let's look at, remember the first step is to figure out what quadrant you're in. So let's look at what they gave us. They said that secant is negative. What two quadrants is secant negative? Secant and cosine have the same plus or minus behavior. So cosine and secant are both positive on the right, negative on the left. Therefore, secant will be negative in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. Secant will be negative in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3, just like cosine will be negative in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. Now we also need the sign to be positive. What two quadrants is the sign positive? The sign behaves like a Y. So the sign is positive up, negative down. So the sign will be positive in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 2. We need the triangle where both of these scenarios are true, where secant is negative and sign is positive. So what is the only quadrant where that is true? Right, it would be quadrant 2. It's quadrant 2 because the secant is negative and the sign is positive. So we won't be using quadrant 3. The sign is not positive down here. And we won't be using quadrant 1 because the secant is not negative in quadrant 1. Okay, so our triangle is in quadrant 2. Now let's put up the sides of our triangle. If it's the secant, they're giving you the hypotenuse over the adjacent. Those are the two sides that the secant gives you. Therefore, our hypotenuse is 5 and our adjacent is 2. Remember, adjacent always touches the angle. The opposite is always across from the angle. So this is our adjacent. This is our hypotenuse. This side will be our opposite. Make sure you find the opposite side. You use the Pythagorean theorem to find the opposite side. So let's go ahead and do that. A squared plus b squared equals to c squared. 2 squared plus b squared equals to 5 squared. So 4 plus b squared equals to 25. Move the 4 to the other side. Take the square root. Again, we're representing magnitude, so we don't want the negative. We only want the positive version. The opposite is the square root of 21. Okay, so now we can go ahead and find the values of the trig function. So in this scenario, they're asking for the tangent of theta and the cosecant of theta. First of all, let's figure out the positive and negative of these two trig functions. In quadrant 2, what is the plus or minus of the tangent function? Good. It's negative. Tangent, again, is the ratio of sine over cos. Sine is positive in quadrant 2, but cos is negative in quadrant 2, so positive over negative is negative. Or again, I did the chart, so the only trig function positive in quadrant 2 is the sine function out of the sine, cosine, and tangent. Cosecant has the same plus or minus as its reciprocal function sine. Sine is positive in quadrant 2 because it's up. Sine is like a Y. Remember, so if sine is positive, its reciprocal will be positive. The cosecant will also be positive. That's the plus or minus. Now let's go ahead and do the ratio of the sides. So what two sides are the tangent? Good, that's the opposite over the adjacent. So the opposite side here is a radical 21, and the adjacent side is a 2. So the tangent of theta will be negative radical 21 over 2. Let's now do the cosecant. What two sides are the cosecant? The cosecant is the hypotenuse over the opposite. The hypotenuse here is a 5. The opposite is a radical 21. So we're going to get this. If you rationalize the answer, this is fine. If you rationalize the answer, it's 5 radical 21 over 21. You'd have to multiply up down by radical 21 if you're going to rationalize that. Okay, gang, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you're good with finding the values of trig functions given two trig functions. Okay, gang, I'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.